Throughout the 2024 campaign, Donald Trump held dozens of rallies, reportedly around 96 in total. Unlike Fox News, CNN had largely stopped broadcasting Trump's campaign rallies live after 2016, citing concerns about unfiltered misinformation and diminishing news value. In fact, CNN executives admitted it was a mistake to air so many Trump rallies in 2016 purely for the ratings and shock value. By Trump's 2024 run, CNN and MSNBC typically refrain from live coverage of his stump speeches, opting instead to monitor events and report any newsworthy moments rather than carry full speeches in real time. For the vast majority of Trump's 2024 rallies, on the order of 90-plus events, CNN did not cut away to air them live. This stands in stark contrast to Fox News, which often showed Trump's rallies gavel to gavel. As media reporter Caleb Ikama noted in late 2020, live rally coverage was a practice that competitors like CNN have largely avoided since 2016. That remained true into 2024. However, one rally proved an exception. On July 13, 2024, CNN aired Trump's entire rally in Butler, Pennsylvania live, in what would turn out to be a fateful decision. This was notable because CNN had skipped almost every other rally up to that point, a fact that even onlookers like Elon Musk found weird, since I do not believe they did it for any other rally. Musk wasn't alone in observing this. Online commenters tallied that CNN aired just 1 out of 96 Trump rallies, the Butler event. Why Butler? CNN later explained the context. The network says it chose to carry the Butler rally live, anticipating major news, specifically, an announcement of Trump's running mate. In a public statement, CNN noted it provided live coverage of President Trump's Butler, Pennsylvania rally in anticipation of news about his pick for vice president. The rally was Trump's final campaign event before the Republican National Convention, set to begin July 15, 2024. So speculation was rife that he might reveal or hint at his VP choice that night. Indeed, it was just days before the convention, a logical time to name a running mate. By airing the rally, CNN positioned itself to capture that potential breaking news. Network PR emphatically stated that any suggestion that CNN had a different motive is completely false. In other words, CNN insists the decision was news-driven, not out of any extraordinary foresight about what would occur. Notably, CNN's claim that Butler was among many other Trump rallies taken live in 2024-5 has been scrutinized. Archival evidence shows CNN did dip into a few Trump rallies shortly before Butler. For example, on June 18, June 22, June 28, and July 9, 2024, CNN had reporters on site and broadcast portions of Trump's remarks live. These instances suggest CNN had begun easing its no rallies policy even prior to Butler, at least for brief segments. However, Butler's rally appears to have been one of the only rallies that CNN carried in full and in real time on television. In fact, CNN's newsroom programming was actively airing Trump's speech live that evening. Anchor Jessica Dean was narrating over Trump's remarks at 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time when the unthinkable happened. The Butler rally, held at the Butler Farm Showgrounds in western Pennsylvania, started as a routine campaign event but quickly made national headlines for an entirely different reason than intended. At 6:12 p.m. Eastern Time, about 10 minutes into Trump's speech, gunshots rang out. CNN's cameras, which had been carrying Trump's speech, suddenly captured Secret Service agents rushing the stage and surrounding Trump. Anchor Jessica Dean broke in as the footage showed agents grabbing Trump and pulling him off the podium. In those moments, CNN's live broadcast pivoted from campaign rhetoric to a major breaking news emergency. Within seconds, it became clear that an assassination attempt was unfolding on live television. Trump was escorted off stage with blood visible on the side of his head. The rally crowd erupted in confusion and panic. CNN quickly shifted into rolling coverage. correspondent Elena Treen, who was on the ground in Butler, reported live updates by phone amid the chaos. Other networks also scrambled to cover the incident. Fox News and NewsNation happened to also be airing the rally live and caught the shooting in real time, while MSNBC and the broadcast networks cut into regular programming with special reports minutes later. What began as CNN's rare live rally broadcast had instantaneously become wall-to-wall coverage of an attempted presidential assassination. A striking aspect of the Butler event is that CNN's one full live rally broadcast coincided with the one rally where an assassination attempt occurred. This coincidence has fueled much attention and conspiracy addressed later. Official timelines show that Trump started speaking shortly after 6 p.m., and at 6:12 p.m. the first shots were heard. Secret Service agents can be seen in footage swarming Trump within seconds. The attacker fired multiple rounds from a distance, managing to graze Trump. Trump was rushed off stage to safety within moments. Roughly 30 minutes later, the Secret Service confirmed Trump was safe, and Trump's campaign put out word that he had only a minor injury. A bullet grazed the upper part of his right ear, according to Trump's own social media post. Tragically, others were not so fortunate. In the burst of gunfire, one rally attendee was killed and at least 2 others wounded. The scene was one of panic, medics tending to victims in the crowd, attendees taking cover, and law enforcement trying to locate the shooter. Within moments of the attack, Secret Service agents returned fire and neutralized the gunman, who was killed at the scene. The suspect was later identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, a local man positioned on a rooftop overlooking the rally. It was a shocking turn of events, and it all played out on live television, since CNN, and a few others, happened to be broadcasting the rally. Anchor Jessica Dean and analyst Ron Brownstein, clearly stunned, narrated the evacuation and then began piecing together what happened as information trickled in. CNN quickly pulled in more resources, treating it as a breaking national news story of the highest order. In the aftermath, investigators discovered that multiple security warnings were missed in the run-up to the shooting. Although the attack seemed to come out of nowhere to viewers, law enforcement on site had actually spotted the eventual shooter at least 20 to 30 minutes before shots were fired. According to an interim Senate report and local police accounts, a member of a Beaver County SWAT sniper team noticed a suspicious young man lurking near a building on the fairgrounds around 5:45 p.m., well before Trump took the stage. The man, later identified as Crooks, was wearing a gray T-shirt, carrying a rangefinder device and hovering near a bike and backpack. It just didn't seem right, the SWAT sniper Gregory Nickel recounted, noting there was no apparent reason to have a distance-gauging device at a political rally. Nickel snapped photos of the individual and immediately relayed a warning about a suspicious person to the event's Joint Law Enforcement Command post. Crucially, this early warning was not effectively acted upon. A Senate Homeland Security Committee investigation later found that Secret Service personnel were alerted about a man with a rangefinder fully 27 minutes before the shooting, yet that information never reached the agents protecting Trump. Nickel's alert apparently got lost amid poor communication. In fact, multiple communication failures plagued the security operation. The Secret Service had issues with their radios on site. One counter-sniper's radio wasn't working, and the special agent in charge actually gave up his own radio to another agent, leaving himself with no direct comms during the event. At 4:33 p.m., over an hour before the shooting, the Secret Service's drone surveillance unit had such serious technical problems that an agent was on a helpline with a vendor. The operator had only 3 months' experience with the system. In short, the protective effort was hampered by poor planning, equipment failures, and lack of a clear chain of command. Factors a Senate report concluded directly contributed to the success of the assassination attempt. As a result, critical warnings went unheeded. After the initial alert about the suspicious individual, another alarm was raised just 2 minutes before the shooting. A local officer radioed that someone was on a rooftop overlooking the rally. Moments later came a frantic message that the person on the roof was armed. Tragically, the Senate report found this last-minute warning was not relayed to key Secret Service agents near Trump. In other words, the pieces of the puzzle were there: an odd man with a rangefinder, then a figure on the roof with a gun, but no one in charge connected the dots in time. The local SWAT team members later vented frustration that their alarms never happened, in the view of lead federal agents. "We had no communication, not until after the shooting," one SWAT officer said, noting their team saw the problem coming and tried to sound the alarm. An hour after Nichols' first warning, crooks opened fire from that very roof. Only after the shots did all units react. By then, it was too late, as one officer lamented. Federal authorities also looked into whether any broader threat intelligence was missed prior to the event. The Department of Homeland Security and FBI had not issued any specific threat alerts for the Butler rally ahead of time, nothing publicly known at least. However, subsequent investigation revealed that crooks may have pre-planned his attack days in advance. CNN reported that investigators believe crooks flew a drone over the Butler rally site in a reconnaissance trip prior to the event. If true, that suggests a degree of premeditation and scouting that was not detected beforehand. The absence of prior federal warning about crooks isn't surprising. He had no criminal record or known extremist affiliations that would put him on a watch list. This was not a case of a flagged threat that agencies failed to disseminate. Rather, it was a failure of on-the-ground coordination at the event itself. Still, the fact that CNN chose to televise this particular rally, among so many it skipped, with an attempted assassination about to happen, was an eerie coincidence that many would later remark upon. Once the dust settled, attention turned to Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old gunman shot dead by Secret Service countersnipers moments after he opened fire. Crooks' identity and background proved puzzling to investigators. Hailing from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Pittsburgh, Crooks had no obvious profile of a would-be assassin. The FBI quickly announced it was treating the case as an act of domestic terrorism, but his motive remained elusive. In the immediate aftermath, officials said, there is yet to be an established motive for Crooks' actions. Months later, that remains true. No manifesto, no clear ideological grievance, and no known group affiliation have come to light. Investigators combed through Crooks' life for red flags. What emerged was a somewhat contradictory portrait. Classmates described Crooks as quiet and introverted, a loner, and noted he was even relentlessly bullied in school, according to one peer. He had an interest in firearms. He tried out for his high school's rifle team, though was rejected for poor marksmanship, and a passion for history. Politically, acquaintances gave mixed impressions. He definitely was conservative, one former classmate told the press, saying Crooks espoused right-wing views in a mostly liberal school. Indeed, records show that when Crooks registered to vote at 18, he registered as a Republican. Yet a bit earlier, at age 17, Crooks had donated a token $15 to a progressive Democratic PAC, an odd twist suggesting he wasn't a straightforward partisan ideologue. This contradictory detail, donating to a left-leaning cause, then registering GOP, left investigators hesitant to ascribe a clear political motive. It makes me wonder why he would carry out an assassination attempt on the conservative candidate, mused Max Smith, the classmate who recalled Crooks as staunchly conservative. As for Crooks' mental state or personal motives, little is known. No threatening posts or extremist manifestos have been found in his name. FBI officials scoured his electronic devices and found no threatening language on his social media accounts, noting he left barely any online footprint at all. They did locate a Discord chat account believed to be his, but nothing incriminating has been reported from it. By all accounts so far, Crooks acted alone and kept his plans to himself. He obtained the weapon, an AR-15 style rifle, from his father, who had purchased it legally about 6 months prior. Crooks secretly took that rifle, and apparently a makeshift explosive device found later in his car, to the rally site. The presence of an explosive in his vehicle indicates he had contemplated causing even more harm or a diversion, though it's unclear if he intended to use it or escape. The attack itself was chillingly calculated. Crooks arrived early, stashed his bicycle and backpack, and ascended a nearby building to gain a sniper position. He waited for Trump to start speaking, then fired at least 8 rounds from the roof toward the stage. He was roughly 100 to 200 yards from Trump. Miraculously, he only managed to graze Trump's ear by a matter of inches. One person in the crowd, a local firefighter named Corey Comprator, 50, was killed by Crooks' gunfire. 2 others were struck and badly wounded. As Crooks reloaded to continue shooting, he was taken down by a Secret Service sniper team on site. The entire incident from first shot to shooter neutralized lasted only a minute or two. To date, Crooks' motives remain officially undetermined. The FBI accessed his phone and other devices, but a preliminary review had not helped agents determine what his motive was as of a couple days after the attack. No evidence has surfaced that Crooks was driven by a known political extremist movement. It's possible he nursed a private grudge or a desire for notoriety. Some have speculated he might have been suicidal and sought to go out in infamy. Others wonder if his aim was to sow chaos in the election rather than support one side or the other. Absent a clear statement from Crooks, we are left with a troubling mystery. This uncertainty has fed various theories, but what's confirmed is that Thomas Crooks nearly altered American history in an instant, and did so without obvious warning signs. Before the Butler rally, CNN's approach to Trump events was generally cautious and often critical. In the months leading up to July 2024, CNN covered Trump's campaign largely through reporting and analysis rather than airing his speeches live. When Trump did make news at rallies, CNN would report on notable lines or correct misinformation afterward, rather than give him unfiltered airtime. For example, CNN reporters often highlighted false claims from Trump's stump speeches and provided context instead of broadcasting the claims directly. CNN and MSNBC anchors had explicitly stated on many occasions that they would not carry Trump rallies live unless something merited it, preferring to bring their audience anything of interest, rather than the entire event. This reflected an editorial stance developed post-2016 to avoid amplifying false or inflammatory statements. Thus, leading into Butler, CNN's on-air tone toward Trump was often skeptical and fact-check oriented. However, on July 13, once CNN made the call to cover the rally live, for the expected VP news, the tone shifted to straight news coverage. During the rally broadcast, CNN presented Trump's speech with limited commentary. Anchor Jessica Dean was essentially emceeing the event live, occasionally interjecting context but largely letting the images speak until the crisis hit. When the shots rang out, CNN's tone immediately became one of alarm, urgency, and concern. There was no politicized filter in that moment. It was pure breaking news mode. CNN's visuals showed the chaos, and the network exercised caution in speculating. In the first minutes, anchors and reporters stuck to observable facts. Trump had been rushed off, there was an apparent security incident, the extent of injuries unknown. As confirmation came that it was gunfire, CNN's reporting emphasized the gravity. A former U.S. president, leading presidential candidate, had just survived an attempt on his life on stage. The coverage became 24/7 and somber, reflecting the seriousness of an assassination attempt. In the immediate aftermath that night, CNN anchors struck a notably respectful and unifying tone regarding Trump. Given that Trump was the victim of violence, CNN's coverage underscored that political violence has no place in America, echoing sentiments from leaders across the spectrum. For instance, CNN aired President Joe Biden's live statement from the White House that evening, in which Biden forcefully condemned the attack. "There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. We cannot condone this." CNN also reported that Biden had called Trump personally, and that both men agreed on the need for unity. Trump's own initial reaction, posted on his Truth Social account, was read on CNN. He urged the country to stand united, and vowed to continue his campaign unbowed. This narrative of national unity against violence featured prominently in CNN's coverage immediately after Butler. Even CNN's often critical commentators set aside partisan critique in that moment. The focus was on the shocking nature of the attack and relief that Trump was alive. Over the next days, CNN's editorial angle broadened to cover multiple facets of the story: the security failures, the investigation into the shooter, and the political implications. CNN correspondents like Alex Marquardt and Evan Perez dug into how the Secret Service bungled the pre-rally warnings. Segments showed how this was the first time since 1981, the Reagan assassination attempt, that a current or former U.S. president had been shot at, placing the incident in historical context. One CNN analysis piece proclaimed that the attack opens a dark new chapter in America's cursed story of political violence, linking it to the lineage of JFK, RFK, Reagan, and others. The tone in such analysis was grave and introspective, highlighting how traumatic and significant this event was in American politics. At the same time, CNN did not shy away from discussing Trump's own rhetoric and the broader political climate once the immediate crisis passed. Notably, CNN reported that some Trump supporters at the rally immediately tried to blame the media for the assassination attempt, suggesting that negative coverage of Trump had incited violence. CNN correspondents on the ground interviewed attendees. A few distraught supporters shouted accusations that the press or Trump's opponents had fomented hatred. CNN aired those perspectives, but also contextualized them, pointing out that leading figures in both parties and in the media universally condemned the attack and that there was zero evidence the shooter was influenced by anti-Trump media. If anything, CNN noted, the initial evidence suggested the shooter didn't leave any manifesto at all. This coverage demonstrated CNN's effort to tamp down unfounded rumors while acknowledging the charged atmosphere. CNN's tone toward Trump in the wake of the attempt was somewhat more empathetic than usual, given the circumstances. Panel discussions on CNN debated how the attempt might affect the campaign. Would Trump receive a sympathy boost? How would security change? Rather than relitigating Trump's controversies in that moment. Even typically critical CNN analysts struck a humanizing note, remarking on Trump's composure. For example, CNN's Wolf Blitzer noted that Trump was fortunate to escape serious harm, and that the image of him returning to the stage, when he briefly re-emerged to signal he was okay, was dramatic and symbolically defiant. Still, as days passed, CNN did resume its scrutiny of Trump's words and actions. By the time Trump did interviews about the incident, such as one with the Washington Examiner's Selena Zito, CNN hosts passed his remarks for any politicization of the event. Overall, though, the editorial stance around the Butler attack itself was non-partisan. CNN framed it as a national moment of reckoning with political violence, not a partisan issue. One notable CNN piece titled, "Attack on Trump Reopens a Chilling Chapter in American Politics," explicitly drew parallels to the Reagan and JFK attempts and warned of the threat of politically motivated violence rearing its head again. Such coverage underscored that CNN treated the assassination attempt as a serious news event first and foremost, with solemn tone, even as the network continued to fact-check and critique Trump on other matters in the weeks after. The assassination attempt in Butler turned Trump's rallies from routine campaign stops into must-watch news events. Immediately after Butler, CNN adjusted its approach and began covering Trump's subsequent rallies live or in fuller fashion. The very next weekend, on July 20, 2024, Trump held his first rally since the assassination attempt in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and CNN carried it live with extensive coverage. This rally had intense interest. It was Trump's return to the stage after surviving the shooting. CNN aired portions of Trump's Grand Rapids speech and reported on his demeanor. He notably opened by thanking the Secret Service and telling supporters he will never ever give up, a defiant theme that CNN highlighted. This marked a clear shift. CNN was now treating Trump rallies as inherently newsworthy again, presumably because anything from a security incident to a major statement could occur. As the campaign moved into the fall general election season, CNN continued to broadcast Trump's major rallies with increasing frequency. By October 2024, Trump, now the official Republican nominee, was holding larger, high-profile events, and CNN often provided live updates or live feeds for the most significant ones. For instance, on October 27, 2024, Trump held a rally at New York's Madison Square Garden, MSG, a rare rally in deep blue New York City. CNN not only covered the event in real time via its live blog, but also reported on it on air. This rally drew attention because Trump appeared with billionaire Elon Musk on stage. Musk made a surprise appearance to endorse Trump, casting the election in dire terms. The presence of a figure like Musk made it even more newsworthy, and CNN captured Musk's remarks and Trump's response as live news. During these post-Butler rallies, CNN's coverage style mixed live footage with active fact-checking and analysis. The network would often carry the start of Trump's speech live, then cut away if it devolved into standard stump material or false claims, with anchors summarizing or correcting the record. For example, at the MSG rally, Trump launched into a series of harsh, profane attacks on Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and other Democrats right at the outset. CNN reported that the rally began with a series of profane attacks on his opponents, noting the dark and hateful tone of the rhetoric. Instead of airing every insult verbatim, CNN had correspondents describe the remarks and discuss their implications. In one segment after that rally, CNN's Dana Bash pointed out that Trump later characterized the NYC event as a love fest at Mar-a-Lago, but Bash flatly corrected that on air, saying the rally was in fact marked by divisive and offensive jokes. This illustrates that while CNN was now showing Trump's rallies live, it also actively contextualized and challenged his statements as part of the coverage. The editorial stance was not to simply be a microphone, but to cover these rallies as news events that merited scrutiny. Another example came with Trump's final campaign swing. CNN covered Trump's last rally before Election Day, also in Grand Rapids, Michigan, reminiscent of his 2016 finale. By this point, it was standard that CNN would carry at least portions of the speech live, then have analysts comment. The tone in these later rallies' coverage returned to a more typical CNN balance, reporting on Trump's crowd sizes and messages, but also pointing out misinformation. However, it's worth noting that the assassination attempt itself was a constant undercurrent. CNN would often mention the Butler incident when covering subsequent rallies, for context. For instance, when Trump returned to Butler, Pennsylvania in October for a comeback rally at the very same fairgrounds, this time joined by Elon Musk, CNN reminded viewers this was the site of his previous assassination attempt. The shadow of Butler made each rally feel more consequential from a news perspective. In summary, after July 13, CNN effectively reversed its prior policy and started covering Trump rallies much more like breaking news events. The timing of this shift was directly tied to Butler. Initially, the news value of Trump's response to being shot at, and later, the general recognition that unpredictability can strike at any rally. This was a marked change from earlier in 2024, when CNN barely acknowledged Trump's rallies live. By late 2024, CNN was even running campaign rally live update pages on its website for Trump events, something it hadn't done en masse earlier. One could say the Butler incident re-normalized Trump rally coverage on CNN, albeit with the caveat that CNN applied a journalistic filter to that coverage. Publicly, CNN has been relatively tight-lipped about any internal deliberations or memos related to rally coverage decisions. There have been no known leaked internal memos spelling out a new policy, nor whistleblower accounts contradicting CNN's stated reasons. The clearest insight into CNN's editorial thinking came via its public relations responses after speculation arose, addressed below. CNN's official line has consistently been that covering the Butler rally live was a straightforward editorial call due to expected news, the VP announcement. After the attempt, CNN executives did not issue any grand statement like, "We will now cover all Trump rallies live." Instead, CNN simply started doing it more often, reflecting a de facto change in approach. It's reasonable to infer that internal discussions at CNN recognized Trump's candidacy, especially after surviving an assassination attempt, was a central news story, and that ignoring his rallies might no longer be tenable. Remember that just 2 months earlier, in May 2024, CNN had courted controversy by hosting a live town hall with Trump, which drew backlash from some CNN staff and viewers for allowing Trump a platform. In the wake of that, CNN leadership was reportedly adamant that covering Trump is important but must be done responsibly. After Butler, CNN may have recalibrated further. The rally attack underscored that anything could happen at Trump events, newsworthy or even tragic, so it made sense to have cameras there and be ready to broadcast. We don't have explicit quotes from CNN brass like interim CEO David Zaslav or CNN's editorial chiefs about this shift. But the pattern of coverage speaks for itself. By autumn, CNN was treating Trump, now the GOP nominee, as much as a newsmaker as President Biden or VP Harris in terms of carrying speeches. In one notable instance, CNN even cut away from a Harris speech to cover Trump live when their schedules overlapped, a reversal of the earlier trend of favoring other content over Trump's rallies. Staff comments on the record have been scarce. However, lower-level CNN sources did push back against conspiracy theories implicating CNN. Again, see next section. CNN journalists also appeared on air to emphasize the journalistic rationale. For example, media correspondent Oliver Darcy noted on a CNN Plus panel that Trump's rallies are once again major events. We have to cover them, but we will not platform lies, paraphrasing. This captures the internal strategy. Cover live for news value, but intervene as needed to fact-check. There is no indication that anyone at CNN directed staff not to cover rallies prior to Butler out of malice. It was an editorial judgment call. After Butler, that judgment changed organically due to circumstances. One thing that did emerge internally were praise and critique of CNN's handling of the Butler attack coverage. CNN's quick pivot to live breaking news and the subsequent days of in-depth reporting were seen as a strong moment for the network's news division. This was noted by media watchers and likely within the network as well. Conversely, some CNN staff privately voiced relief that the network had chosen to air the rally, because if CNN had not been filming, they would have had to rely on maybe a shaky cell video for coverage of one of the year's biggest stories. It's possible, though not confirmed, that this reality was discussed in CNN's editorial meetings. We got lucky we were there. Maybe we should err on the side of being present going forward. In essence, Butler might have been a wake-up call internally that ignoring major political rallies carries its own risks, given how quickly they can become the biggest news on Earth. To be clear, no whistleblower from CNN has suggested any nefarious planning or unusual orders around Butler. All available information indicates CNN producers decided to cover it for a potential VP pick, and after the shooting CNN management likely instructed, we need to cover what Trump does next, which naturally included more rallies. There's also no sign of CNN discouraging coverage after Butler. On the contrary, resources were poured into following Trump's campaign trail even more closely. CNN had reporters at every subsequent Trump event. If any internal memos exist, they might simply reinforce CNN's approach to cover Trump thoroughly, but with editorial oversight. One internal communication that did surface indirectly was from the Secret Service director at the time, Kimberly Cheatle. According to reports, Cheatle sent a memo the day after the attack praising the agents on Trump's detail for their swift action in Butler, even though the event exposed serious lapses. She ultimately resigned under pressure due to those lapses. While not directly related to CNN, it's an interesting contrast. CNN's coverage highlighted the failures, whereas internal Secret Service messaging initially applauded the bravery of agents. This discrepancy itself became a talking point on CNN's air, as commentators debated accountability. In summary, within CNN the Butler rally seems to have prompted a pragmatic shift. No more blanket policy of "don't air Trump live," because the news value was too high. Instead, CNN pivoted to a strategy of selective live coverage with active moderation. If there were any doubts or debates among CNN staff about giving Trump more airtime, they were likely assuaged by the understanding that not covering him could mean missing critical moments. By late 2024, CNN essentially normalized the practice of covering Trump's major speeches just as it would cover Biden's, something that was not true a year prior. The attempt on Trump's life in Butler immediately drew comparisons to earlier assassination attempts in American history, particularly those involving modern media coverage. In terms of live news coverage, the closest parallel was the 1981 assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan. On March 30, 1981, John Hinckley Jr. shot Reagan outside the Washington Hilton. Television coverage in 1981 was not live at the moment of the shooting. Networks were not carrying Reagan's speech live, but cameras captured the aftermath and networks broke into programming within minutes. Notably, CNN was a fledgling network in 1981 and did provide continuous coverage after the attack, helping cement CNN's reputation for breaking news. The Trump rally attack in 2024 is the first time since 1981 that an American president or ex-president has been shot at. CNN's on-air reporters explicitly noted this fact, underlining the historical gravity. In 1981, once news broke, all three major networks cut in with special reports, and the footage of Reagan being shoved into a limousine and his aides wounded on the sidewalk became seared in the national consciousness. Similarly, in 2024, every major news network switched to breaking news mode once Trump was attacked, whether they were airing the rally or not. ABC and CBS interrupted programming with special reports by 6:20 p.m. ET, within 8 minutes of the shots. And NBC did so by 6:20 as well. MSNBC, which hadn't been showing the rally, broke into an interview at 6:12 p.m. exactly as Secret Service removed Trump. In that sense, the pattern of coverage echoed what likely would have happened in past decades. Once a major violent incident occurred involving a president, all networks mobilized to cover it extensively. However, there are some differences in media posture before and after such events. In earlier eras, JFK in 1963, Reagan in 1981, the media routinely covered presidential appearances to a significant degree. There was no question of not paying attention to a president's speech. In Trump's case, the media had actually been downplaying his campaign events until that point. This makes the Butler scenario somewhat unique. A media outlet broke its own norm to cover the rally, and thereby captured the attempt live. There's no equivalent instance of a network choosing not to cover a major political event and thereby missing an assassination attempt. For JFK's assassination, the press pool was present in Dallas and caught the aftermath, though the shooting itself was only filmed by a bystander's camera. For Robert F. Kennedy's assassination in 1968, live TV was not present when he was shot at the Ambassador Hotel. News came out slightly later via radio and reports. The attempts on President Gerald Ford in 1975, two separate attempts that year, also were not broadcast live, though news crews were nearby. Those were earlier in the day and led to quick news bulletins. What stands out about Butler is that it was a campaign event being broadcast live, something that really wasn't common in the era of JFK, RFK, or even Reagan. Reagan was president, not campaigning. The only somewhat similar scenario might be George Wallace's shooting in 1972. Wallace, then a presidential candidate, was campaigning in Maryland when he was shot and paralyzed. Television did not air that rally live, but footage was captured and used in news reports after. in 2024, with 24/7 cable and internet, the expectation of instant coverage is much higher. Indeed, video of the Trump rally shooting flooded social media within minutes, and cable networks like CNN had live footage up immediately, reminiscent of how networks now cover any breaking crisis in real time. Historically, after a president was attacked, the media treated subsequent appearances very carefully, often providing heavy coverage because the nation's eyes were trained for any updates. For instance, after Reagan was shot, his first appearance leaving the hospital and his subsequent addresses got intense coverage and commentary about his recovery and security. Similarly, after Trump's near-miss, the media, including CNN, paid special attention to his next moves. One could draw a parallel in tone. After Reagan's shooting, even usually critical reporters struck a respectful tone regarding his resilience, at least for a while. After Trump's, we saw even outlets like CNN framing him as resilient and focusing on unity against violence, at least in the short term. Over time, of course, normal scrutiny resumed. Another historical angle is how conspiracies and speculation often swirl after assassination attempts. Think of the JFK assassination, which spawned countless conspiracy theories that persist to this day. In Trump's case, conspiracy theories bloomed immediately, thanks to the Internet age, and interestingly, some of those theories targeted the media's role, which we'll cover next. In prior cases, media itself wasn't accused of complicity. For example, no one seriously thought CBS or NBC wanted Reagan to be shot just because they were filming him. But in the current climate, such notions gained traction in some circles about CNN. In summary, the media coverage pattern of the Trump rally attempt was consistent with how American media respond to assassination attempts: swift, wall-to-wall reporting, and a rallying cry that violence against the democratic process is unacceptable. The unique twist was that CNN happened to be one of the only networks airing the speech live at the moment, which allowed viewers to witness the event unfiltered as it happened. This is reminiscent of the Oswald shooting in 1963, which was actually broadcast live on TV. Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald was carried on live television. That was one of the first instances of truly live deadly violence on TV. The Trump rally shooting may be one of the first times an American political assassination attempt was seen live by the public, albeit briefly and from a distance. It underscores the increasingly real-time nature of news in the modern era, for better or worse. The extraordinary coincidence that CNN aired the one rally where an assassination attempt occurred did not go unnoticed. It spawned a range of theories and speculation, from mainstream commentary to fringe conspiracy. On social media, users in forums like Reddit's r/conspiracy immediately posed the question: is it true that the first time CNN broadcasted a Trump rally live was the day he got shot? It's like they wanted the world to see. That notion, that CNN somehow knew something, quickly migrated from message boards to more prominent voices. Within days, far-right commentators and influencers were openly wondering if CNN had been tipped off about a possible attack. Joe Rogan discussed it on his podcast, saying it was weird that CNN live-streamed the Butler rally and did not for any other rally. Elon Musk, who at that time was not only the owner of Twitter, X, but also had just been appointed to a Trump administration advisory role, echoed this on Rogan's show and on social media. Musk speculated that CNN's decision was so out of character that perhaps someone told CNN in advance that something interesting, i.e. the attempt, would happen. He stopped short of directly accusing CNN of complicity, clarifying, "I am not suggesting someone at CNN knew about the assassination attempt," but he floated that it was, in the realm of possibility, that CNN was advised that something interesting would take place at Butler. In other words, Musk hinted at a conspiracy in which maybe law enforcement or an inside source warned CNN to watch that rally, implying foreknowledge of an incident. This theory gained enough traction that billionaire investor Bill Ackman amplified it on X, Twitter. Ackman tweeted, "What are the chances that CNN was tipped off to stream the Butler rally? Why isn't this worthy of an investigation? He insinuated that figuring out who orders the coverage and why at CNN could reveal something nefarious. Such comments effectively accused CNN of possible collusion, or at least suggested a dark motive, that CNN wanted to film an attempt on Trump or knew one might happen. CNN forcefully rejected these conspiracy theories. The network's PR department responded publicly to Ackman and indirectly to Musk with a statement on X. CNN provided live coverage of President Trump's Butler rally in anticipation of news about his pick for vice president. Any suggestion contrary to that fact is completely false. CNN called the Rogan/Musk insinuations BS and emphasized the mundane editorial reasoning. The New York Post, covering this brouhaha, noted CNN's denial and highlighted that Musk had described the rally's location as the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, making it seem odd for CNN to show it. Musk and others implied, why else would CNN suddenly care about a rally in rural PA unless they had a heads-up? CNN's answer was clear, because of the VP pick news angle, period. Despite CNN's clarification, the conspiracy theory continued to spread wildly online. Far-right and fringe outlets speculated about deeper plots. Some QAnon-adjacent posters theorized the deep state orchestrated the attempt and made sure CNN cameras were rolling to broadcast either Trump's demise or the chaos. Others flipped the script and suggested CNN and the left wanted to make Trump a martyr on live TV to swing sympathy, an internally inconsistent theory, but it circulated. Notably, there were also baseless claims that the assassination attempt was staged, that it was all theater for optics. CNN addressed this directly in a fact-check article, stating the incident was not staged, and relaying law enforcement's confirmation that it was a genuine attempt on Trump's life. That same CNN piece detailed how conspiracies ranged from claims of a false flag to accusations that media knew in advance. More grounded, but still speculative, commentary also emerged. Some media analysts and critics posited that CNN's motive might have been ratings-driven. After all, CNN's viewership had been sagging, and Trump is a ratings draw. One Reddit user cynically remarked that CNN's leadership worked out they cannot just cater to their liberal political viewpoint and needed to cover Trump for viewership, noting CNN's recent hosting of a Trump town hall as evidence. Under this theory, CNN chose the Butler rally because they expected high interest, VP announcement, and potentially some fireworks. It was a programming decision for eyeballs. Indeed, the Butler rally did deliver huge ratings, sadly for a tragic reason. But to conspiracists, the high viewership and dramatic footage were precisely what CNN wanted. They argue that CNN benefited from the spectacle, which is true in terms of ratings spike, but there's zero evidence that was a consideration in choosing that rally. CNN gets plenty of eyeballs from any breaking news. They hardly needed to orchestrate one. Another line of speculation looked at political motive. Did CNN or elements within the media establishment want to highlight the dangers around Trump to either hurt or help his campaign? For example, some Trump supporters argued that CNN's sudden interest in his rally was to document chaos that could be used against Trump, perhaps to paint his campaign as violent or unstable. Ironically, others argued the opposite, that broadcasting the attempt actually helped Trump by garnering sympathy, so perhaps CNN unwittingly helped him. In fact, Trump did enjoy a small boost in GOP polling after surviving the attempt, as some Republicans rallied around him. This kind of hindsight fueled conspiracies that maybe that was the plan all along. Of course, these ideas contradict each other and often lack internal logic. Importantly, no credible evidence has emerged of any tip-off to CNN. Law enforcement agencies like the FBI and Secret Service have made no suggestion that they warned media. On the contrary, they've been candid about their own failure to even warn themselves properly, as detailed earlier. If the Secret Service didn't effectively alert their own agents on site, it's highly implausible they alerted a news network of a threat. and CNN staff involved have not hinted at anything beyond the VP story reason. The timing, just before convention, strongly supports CNN's stated rationale. It would have been journalistic malpractice not to cover a potential VP announcement. Nonetheless, the theory of CNN's foreknowledge gained enough steam that it entered mainstream discourse. By March 2025, it was being discussed on financial news, Ackman's comments, and even at high levels of media. This shows how distrustful some segments of the public have become toward media institutions. It also demonstrates how a coincidence can be construed as conspiracy when seen through a cynical lens. CNN's airing of the Butler rally was an anomaly in their coverage pattern, and human nature looks for hidden meaning in anomalies, especially when coupled with a dramatic outcome. To round out the speculative angles, there were also fringe claims that the shooter, Crooks, was somehow a pawn in a larger scheme involving media or government factions. Some far-right bloggers implied that if CNN knew to be there, maybe someone knew an assassination attempt was coming and chose not to stop it, to send a message or to influence the election. These theories veer into false flag territory, suggesting the event was allowed or even orchestrated by anti-Trump forces. No credible evidence supports this, and authorities have maintained Crooks acted alone with no accomplices. In fact, if one subscribes to a deep-state conspiracy mindset, it would make little sense to film an attempted assassination for all to see. Covert actors would presumably prefer it happen off-camera. The conspiracies often contradict themselves, but that did not stop them from proliferating in echo chambers online. On the more rational end of speculation, some media watchers simply marveled at the coincidence and floated that CNN had gambled that something newsworthy might happen at Butler, expecting a VP pick, and indeed got something newsworthy, albeit horrible. A few commentators half-jokingly said CNN's bookers might now attend every Trump rally, just in case something crazy happens again. This is less conspiracy and more acknowledging the reality that live events are unpredictable. Butler proved that dramatically. In conclusion, theories about CNN's deeper motive in airing the Butler rally range from ratings calculation to outright conspiracy. The most prominent, boosted by Musk and Ackman, was that CNN had a heads-up or was tipped off about a possible assassination attempt. CNN has unequivocally denied this, and evidence strongly favors CNN's explanation that the expected VP announcement drew their coverage. Other speculations, ratings, narrative control, remain unproven and are largely conjecture based on CNN's prior pattern of not airing rallies. The fact that CNN did cover a handful of rallies in June/July before Butler, as cited by diligent fact-checkers, further undercuts the "only that rally" premise. Ultimately, the convergence of CNN's live camera and an assassination attempt appears to be a tragic coincidence, one ripe for conspiracy theories in our polarized era, but not supported by concrete evidence.